Order. So this is the May 11th meeting of the Greenfield Conservation Commission. This meeting is being recorded. Cassie is sharing a description of some of the considerations of it being held remote during the state of emergency from COVID. If you need any special assistance or compensation, you can reach out to Cassie directly. And like I already said, this meeting is being recorded. If it's interrupted for any reason and needs to stop, it will not be resumed and we'll continue at our next regularly scheduled meeting. First thing on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes from April 27th, 2021, which I believe we need a motion to continue to next meeting.
Correct. I did not finish them in time. I apologize.
Make a motion to continue the minutes of April 27th, 2021 until our next scheduled meeting.
Second that.
Are there any objections? Are there any abstentions? Okay, that has passed, so we'll look at the minutes for our next meeting. So that was unanimous. The first on our schedule of public meetings and hearings is a continued hearing for a notice of intent for slope stability at rear Linwood Street associated with the Franklin County Fairgrounds, map 33, lot 16C, with a DEP file number pending. Is there a representative of the applicant here this evening?
And I just want to note, we actually did get the DEP file number today. The file number for DEP is 168-0341. And I'm dropping the comments into the Google Drive folder right now if you want to take a look, but we'll go over those later. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. This is Mike Nelson, president of the Fairgrounds, here representing the application. With me this evening are Jim Lyons and Gary Bluzowski from NRCS, the engineers. And we also have the contractor on the line. Jack is here and can help with any questions we have this evening.
Great, thank you. Cassie, given that we have a DEP number for this project now, do we need to switch the order of things in the agenda, or should we stick to the same, should we assume the same plan that we discussed?
Yeah, so I think we will stick with the same plan, and the reason is that twofold. One, I think that the DEP will need to, well, I guess I'm not sure, but I think that they'll need to receive the certificate of compliance before I send the order of conditions, which I guess I can just do administratively on my end. You know, send them the certificate of compliance on both tonight, if that's how it works out. And then after that, send them the order of conditions. And but I thought potentially that the applicant would prefer if we discussed everything first and then made sure that it got to a point where you were ready to potentially vote on issuing a new order before issuing a certificate of compliance, just to make sure they still technically have that one if for some reason, you know, you guys didn't vote to give them a new one. Does that sound like a good plan to you, Michael? That was kind of what I was thinking also, was a reason to keep it in this order.
Yeah, if that works for the commission, that's great on our end.
Great. So Michael, would you like to present what the new NOI is for us?
Sure, if you don't mind, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Jim Lyons. He's the lead engineer on the project, and he can walk us through it much more beautifully than I ever could.
All right, good evening, everybody. I think, let me try to share my screen and hopefully that will work, and if I can grab the correct one. Okay, if you can let me know when you are seeing the design file.
Yeah, I just passed presenter privileges to you, so hopefully
Okay,
it will let you do it. You might have to try again.
let me try that again.
And while the document is loading, I'll just give an update to the commission. We had initially planned on meeting with you folks back in January. We had the opportunity to speak with DEP about the project. They were gracious enough to come out and do a field trip with us and review the site plan that NRCS had designed. They were able to offer some feedback to NRCS, and they were able to incorporate DEP's verbal comments from that site visit into this plan, which is what we'll be presenting this evening. So we've already had a little bit of some pre-work done with DEP getting some site visits done.
Correct. And what their main concerns were the taking care of the sedimentation that occurred within the wetlands. So we would be removing the sands that were deposited within the wetlands, and also recreating the wetlands that were disturbed by the settling basin. The other main comment was that the end of the discharge pipe that's conveying the stormwater down the slope would need to be outside of the wetlands, which we did move to outside of the wetlands. And so as you are probably aware, because I believe you've seen this multiple times, there are 3 spots on the slope where we have active erosion ongoing. The plan is to fill those locations with riprap. They are heavily forested over it, and it's a steep slope. It's about a 1.5 to 1 slope, and it's all earthen material, and it's mainly sands. There is some seepage that comes out at a couple locations along the slope as well. The Gully C and Gully B, the state didn't provide any concerns or comments on when we talked about it. The main concern was Gully A, and the stilling basin, which is this location here, was pushed out further into the wetlands, as well as, or it's this location here, as well as the end of the pipe was within the wetlands. So what we did is we moved the pipe to just on the slope side, so we were outside of the wetlands, and we need to dissipate the energy of the water that we're moving down the slope. So we do need a stilling basin so the water can move into the wetlands in a non-erosive fashion. I pulled as far back out of the wetlands that we can. The problem is I can't go any further without having to lay that slope back, which is something that we don't want to open up because of the potential for movement of those sands with precipitation events. And let me flip on down. This is a little bit easier to see. The wetlands are the dashed line that runs here, and it runs up into the stilling basin just in front of the discharge pipe in the head wall for it. And let me flip back a slide and then talk about the sedimentation that occurred in the wetlands when erosion was active. It's mainly within this area here. And what the plan is that those sediments will be excavated. We'll have somebody on site that'll serve as control with the contractor, and we'll excavate the sand until we hit organic layers. And at that point, we'll just remove those sands, and I believe they'll be disposed of on site. Michael, is that correct? that we have a location up top to dispose of those sands?
It's cost dependent. We've asked the contractor to run the numbers on disposal offsite and on-site. I suspect it'll end up being on-site. We do have plenty of area for it to be disposed of.
Okay. Great. And so the gray line here is an approximation. It's really field controlled when we're out there. So it may be a little bit outside of that. It may be a little bit inside of that. Following removal of those materials, there is a wetland plantings that will be placed within there. They were attached to this drawing set as a separate sheet, and I'm not sure if the state saw that in their review based on what their comments were. So I think what I'll do is I'll add an additional drawing sheet that'll have the wetland plants that we're proposing to be planted on there. The other end is within, let me back up to this sheet here. We do have permanent disturbance of the wetlands, and that is where my mouse is outlining, coming up to here. It's approximately 1,600 square feet. And I'm proposing that we take this little bit of a knob in this area before we start encroaching on the slope, and we excavate that down to the approximate elevation of what the existing wetlands are. So we're only taking out about a foot of material, and then we'll put the same wetland plantings that we are doing to restore the sedimentation area, as well as the wetland plantings that will be used to restore the construction access, which is this area here. And let me flip through. Okay, to get a cross section of the stilling basin and the pipe that's conveying the stormwater down. The pipeline is here. The end of the pipe's at this location. The wetlands are just to the right of that. And I will add to the drawing sheet a line showing where the wetlands are so it's clear that we're outside of it. And I think that will address one of DEP's comments. And if any of the commissioners have any questions or comments, we would gladly entertain those.
Jim, do you mind going back one slide?
Yep.
One more.
Sure.
There, that one. Unrelated to this project, but just for the awareness of the commissioners, the area south of where the three gullies are, you can see the clearing area. Yeah, where the mouse is there, that area now. Just for your awareness, separate from this project, we are working with the tech school to completely repopulate that area. So we'll be repopulating it with vegetation native to the area, so water hungry trees and such. So we're working with them on that, completely independent of this project, but just for your awareness, we do anticipate that taking place as well after this phase of the project is completed.
Thanks for the thorough walkthrough. I have a question. Can you explain the purpose of the riprap below the outlet that is in the wetland and how
Yes.
the 1,600-foot area was calculated?
Okay, so that's the riprap from the end of the pipe back over here. The need for that is the water that's coming out of that pipe is going to be upwards of 20 feet per second in velocity, which would be highly erosive if we discharge that onto the existing wetlands that are out there. The riprap for the stilling basin is designed to dissipate that energy and allow the water to discharge in a non-erosive fashion into the wetlands.
So it's like a splash pad?
Yes, it's a big splash pad. So if you're thinking of at your house, if you have your hose out and you're spraying into the lawn, if you let that hose discharge into one spot in the grassed area, you're going to start to erode the soils that are there and displace the vegetation. So the purpose of the stone is to take that energy of the water. It causes the water to splash, and it's dissipating that energy, and it'll work its way out. Under most conditions that we will see, the water is going to flow out of that pipe, and it's going to flow through the stones and just work its way through the stones into the wetlands. It's designed for the larger storm events where you'd actually see water above the stones, and that'll be on storm events probably greater than a 10-year storm event. So we're looking at 3 inches or more of precipitation in 24 hours. We'll actually start seeing water flowing over it. So it's designed for the larger events.
And how deep is that splash pad of stone?
The greatest thickness, as we're looking at this section here, is about 6 feet on the tail end down here.
Oh.
And the stones are fairly large. Let me see if they're called out for here. So the 50% stone size is 9 inches. The largest stones are about 1.5 feet. We may get a couple that are slightly bigger than that.
Are you using angular riprap or rounded river stones or?
No, it would need to be angular riprap. Because you want the stones to interlock with each other. The rounded stone, we would need a much larger stone if we went with rounded.
And is that the same stone that you're using to fill all 3 channels?
Yes, it's the same stone.
I actually have a question about the other 2 areas. I know there's the access road through the wetlands that gets to Gully A. How does the riprap get to Gully B and C without the access roads going through there?
And what Jack may add to this, he's the contractor that the Fairgrounds is working with. In our discussions earlier, he stated that he's able to construct Gully B and Gully C from the top. They have an excavator with a long reach. They may, now that we've pushed the stilling basin back into the slope a little bit, he may be able to construct Gully A, but I think he needs some time to really look through the drawings to get a sense if he still needs access from down below, which is why we're showing it.
Okay.
And then so the gully, I'm sorry, the replication area, I think it was between B and C, could also be reached from the access area on the map, or?
Well, the replication area is right next to the area that they need to get in to do the sediment removals.
Mhm.
So that'll be access from down below.
And so they would sort of drive the excavator into that area to remove the sediment?
Yes, from the area that we're within the gray circle to the sediment, they would drive straight in. And that area doesn't need any mats or anything because we already have a number of feet of sand on top of the wetlands, and they're going to be excavating that and working their way back out. So it'll be restored.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
Is there any excavation associated with the construction of the splash pad in Gully A?
Yes, there would be. A minimal amount. It's more to smooth the ground surface out and remove the near surface organics.
Would it be possible to use those organics for the replication site? Essentially, if you are excavating soil from where the splash pad is being constructed, to save that and use the soil from the same site in the wetland reconstruction?
Yes, that should be possible for them to do. We are going to have a fair amount of organics within the replication area that we're taking out. So it's just going to need to be balanced on site, but they could utilize some of that material.
So you're saying that you think that there is more organics on site than what you will need in total?
Yes, there should be more on site than what we would need in total because it's 1,600 feet for 1,600 feet.
Mm-hmm.
If we take the organics out of the wetland area, we have 1,600, we'll assume it's a foot thick just for discussion purposes, 1,600 cubic feet. We now have the area where we're going to create the wetlands, which is immediately adjacent to it. We have organics there, which we'll say are a foot thick. So we have 1,600 cubic feet there. So if we utilized all the organics on site, we'd have to make a much deeper excavation. So the goal is to get the 6 to 12 inches of organics within the wetland area, replication area.
So there's no material being brought on site other than the riprap, and there's no soil or loam or anything being brought on site.
Correct.
Only riprap.
Correct.
You said that the B and C were going to be done from the top of the slope. I thought in your the plan that I was reading, is there going to be any clearing of the slope at all?
On the slope itself, the trees that have within the gully area, the trees that have fallen in or have partially fallen down will be removed within that area. We're going to dress up the eroded areas a little bit just to smooth them out, but we're not going to do any clearing outside of that.
Okay, so no mature trees have to come down.
There's no mature trees that aren't impacted by the ongoing erosion. These are some mature trees that part of their root ball has been undermined. Those will probably need to go. But the ones that are stable and on the slope, we're not going to touch.
How are you going to secure those areas of the slope that you're, smoothing out to meet grade on the riprap?
For gullies B and C, erosion's already ongoing to some extent, particularly within gully C. So the restoration of the materials that end up downhill from there will be removed from on site. There's no real way to mitigate the movement of sediments on that slope during construction, aside from keeping the water away from that area, which we will have the contractor do so that we're not adding water coming down that slope. But if we get a large rain event while construction's ongoing, some sediments will move down that slope, but those will be removed during the mitigation work to removal sediments in the wetlands. And Gully Area B is fairly small area. We don't have much active movement of sediments outside of that area at this point. It's starting to open up, so we're taking care of that at this time, so we don't have a future problem.
Are either gully, like riprap areas, going to be like seated on top or have any kind of vegetation on top of them?
No, we still have very good forest cover over them. They're not very wide, and we have very mature trees, so they're not going to see a bunch of sunlight. Any soil we put in there will most likely be eroded down and move its way down to the wetlands if we try to put topsoil over it and then seed. So the best bet is just leaving it as stone. Over time, leaf matter will wash its way into the stone, and vegetation will start growing over the years. If you look at any stream bank that's been rip-wrapped, that's been there for a long period of time, you see that vegetation does take over naturally, and that's what we anticipate will happen here.
So there won't be any like maintenance, at least of those two gullies?
No maintenance of those two gullies.
What was the plan for the source of the timber for the matting for the access?
That was left up to the contractor. Jack may be able to talk about that.
I have another question that might be for Jack as well. Is just, is there a sense yet of a rough time for completion for the job?
Everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Right now, we wanted to just attend this meeting to see what we were up against and where we were at coming out of this, to give us an idea of what our true scope would be, because there had been some changes made. As far as timber mats, there's a variety of different outfits that we can source mats from. The idea is to get in and get out using that lower access with minimal damage. The mats are usually 4 feet wide, 16 feet long, 8 inches thick. They weigh about 3,000 pounds. And we wanted to make a road in there that we would, primarily be working on, in a perfect world, not having the equipment leave the timber mats to minimize damage. Timeline, the schedule has been pushed around. The ideal time for us would preferably be in the drought season, sometime mid-June to the end of July. And as we enter into August and September, rain events and weather patterns tend to change. So ideally, we'd be working in these areas during the dry time, drought season time of year.
And from the Fairgrounds perspective, we fully support that timeline. We're really at the mercy of Jack and his ability. So whenever Jack is ready to move forward with the construction, we're ready to go as well, pending the appropriate permitting, of course.
I have a question that might be back to Jim. So we said no maintenance in gullies B and C. What kind of maintenance is there going to be in Gully A with the stilling basin, and how will that be accessed to do that?
There really should not be much maintenance needed within Gully A. Up top, there is a small, I'll call it a sediment trap. We're trying to keep it as small as possible because of where we are related to the top of the slope, which should catch any large debris that comes through. The only real maintenance that would be needed over time would be if trash or debris got washed down into that stilling basin, and that could be accessed by walking down the riprap. So we wouldn't need mechanical access for that area.
And just one other quick question about that. The like temporary road that's being built through there. I think I recall on the plans it said that, I mean, obviously any trees that would be cut down that would needed to be moved out of the way. Is replanting going to happen as that road's being taken out?
As that road is taken out, the wetlands will be planted within the disturbed areas for access. So yes.
Okay, and that's just the same plants that are going to go in the replication area.
Yep, that would
Okay.
be the same plantings.
All right.
Did you say that you for those plantings, Jim, or not yet?
They were attached as a separate document to these plans, but I will put them on the plans. I'm not sure if the commission has seen them or not, but I thought they worked their way to you guys.
I think I did see them in the Google Drive folder.
I do know that we sent them along to DEP, and I know Cassie has copies of them, so I'm sure, of course, she would be happy to share them with you if you haven't seen them.
Yeah, I can do that now if you guys want. Let's see.
Thought I did see something, but
Let's see. I have two documents. It's the critical area planting and then the herbaceous cover, riparian herbaceous area. Riparian herbaceous cover. You guys have one you want to see first?
The riparian herbaceous cover, I think, would be more applicable to the wetlands.
Okay, hold on just a second. It's loading. And let's see, I'm gonna share my screen.
And I tell you, while I was filling out the NOI, I've never struggled writing a word as hard as I tried to write riparian herbaceous. For some reason, those words were quite a challenge for me. An interesting combination of two very bizarre words.
Okay. See attached. See attached. Here's the methods. I don't know if you guys want me to linger here. I can just get straight to the plant list.
I guess while we're here, it does mention two methods for the planting, and I don't know if they've picked a method. And number 4.
We were leaving it at the option of the installers for either method.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. And so is this just a list for them to choose from, or is it going to be all these species?
It's a list to choose from. Let me back up and see. This isn't my area of expertise. So we call out for that there'll be a minimum of 5 species that would be planted from that attached list.
I see.
So, and that more can be utilized, but at a minimum 5. And the planting is 2 plugs should be planted within every 18-inch square.
I believe the number Morgan shared with me was about 2,000 plugs would be installed.
And she's the one who knows this, so that would be correct.
2,000. All right, let me know if you guys want me to scroll back down to the list or stay here.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was talking on mute there, but I just have a question about the maintenance. Can anyone talk a bit about the plan for weed control, which is mentioned here, and as well as the, ensuring that the plants don't drown in their early stages, or if that's been sort of discussed and settled yet.
I don't, well, the best for weed control and just following through on the list, it's recommending just pulling plants that are weeds, so species that were not planted within that area. That would be recommended that the fairgrounds would go in there and verify that over the first year and remove the weeds. And Michael, we would be happy to have one of our planners out there. Just if you're having volunteers doing that work, just to help with identification, that
Sure.
the right species are being removed.
Absolutely, that'd be great. Yeah, and I can absolutely commit my team to doing that maintenance for the first year at minimum. We're of course very committed to making this project be a success.
The commissioners can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the standard is at least two growing seasons worth of successful monitoring showing that the plantings have succeeded. So if you can, keep track of the progress and keep up sending us the reporting, you can get 2 growing seasons worth of reports saying that it's established. That's the typical requirement before you can get the certificate of compliance.
You got it.
Erica, did you have a question earlier? Like I heard you start to ask something and then it moved on.
I think it was back when we were talking about the road. Does the wetland go all the way up to the town road, or or are we going through somebody's property or what?
We are
To access
through the neighbor's property. The fairgrounds have gotten permission. I don't recall what the house number is for the property owner for permission to go through their property, and behind their property is where the wetland starts.
Okay. So I assume something will happen with their property, whatever.
Yeah, that will get restored to their satisfaction.
Resocked or whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Just to go back to, sorry, Erica,
Go
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to backpedal, so you should keep on your train of thought.
No, I was gonna actually go back to, so go ahead.
Okay, well, I was just going to say on that screen share you just had up, Cassie, about the weed control. I was just curious if, because you had specified in parentheses a couple of invasive species, are you meaning you're just going to manage invasive species by hand removal, or what specifically weeds are you talking about?
It's the plan calls out for, in particular, purple loosestrife, foxtail barley, and reed canary grass to be removed from that area. I would be hesitant, since it is surrounded by wetlands and we are working with the organics within the existing wetlands, so we would get some germination of what's currently growing there out of the organics. To just have a blanket statement that we remove anything but the 5+ species that were planted. I think we would be better off focusing on known wetland weeds for that area.
And those weeds, I think the second half of Kristen's question there was, they just be hand pulled, or what methods of weeding would you use there?
We are providing two options, with the best being hand pulling. The next best option would be using approved chemicals to kill them. Hand pulling would definitely be the best methodology. I would see the only need for chemical control is if there was an extensive invasion of one of the invasive species within there, such as reed canary grass or something like that, which I wouldn't really anticipate since we aren't bringing in any soils from off-site. The only thing that's being brought in to revegetate the wetlands are the wetland plantings themselves.
Were any of those weeds or invasive species identified as already being on site?
I do not know that.
I'll chime in. This is Gary with NRCS. From my site visit there, I did not notice a lot of invasive species. Like Jim said, the fact that the soil we're using the soil that's already on site. I'm not envisioning any issues, especially because the area is small enough that I think it's very easy to maintain. We're looking at 0.1, 0.15 acres. You know, we're not looking at 10 acres of disturbed areas here. We're looking at just 0.1, 0.2 acres. I think it's very easy that they should be able to maintain by hand.
Yeah, I'm looking at the site visit photos and I don't really see any significant colonization of invasives.
Like Jim said earlier, it's pretty shady. You know, there's a lot of mature trees providing a lot of shade. There's definitely some herbaceous vegetation growing down there, but there's not thick vegetation growing down there like you see with purple loosestrife and reed canary grass. I don't remember seeing those species on my walkthrough.
I had another question about the planting methods or the installation list there. The first item is to make sure that the soil is well packed. And I'm curious about that since it's my understanding and experience that one of the reasons why wetland replications fail is when sites are overly compacted. And so I was just curious about the inclusion of making sure that the site is well packed rather than aerated.
I think that, it's going to be, packing the soil with hands around the roots of the material just to get air pockets out from around the roots is my understanding to lead to major success, as opposed to compaction. There's going to be some equipment on site, but for the hand packing around the roots, that's just by hand. I don't see that being any excessive pressure leading to compaction.
I guess on that note, as you sort of draw back the sand, remove the sand from the area in the east, being it's a heavy excavator, I'm wondering if people with more experience than myself anticipate it being heavily compacted, the wet soils there, and if that's a concern, how might you address it?
Yeah, the equipment that's going to be used on site, or even a conventional excavator, it's a heavy piece of equipment, but that weight is bared over a very large area. So the effective ground pressure from that equipment is small. From the engineering side that I do, when I compact soils, they can't just track it with an excavator or a bulldozer or anything else. They would need to use something that actually has a lot of high ground pressure, such as a roller, which is designed for that, or an on-road truck, 10-wheel dump truck that's full. where you can actually put some weight into the ground. The ground pressure from the excavators is actually pretty low. So I would not anticipate any substantial compaction occurring from that on site.
We mentioned earlier, Cassie mentioned the critical area planting. I'm curious what I looked at that document and I'm not exactly sure what area that's covering. I don't know if we could look at that.
Yeah. I can share my screen with that in a second. Hold on.
While we queue that up, is there a seed mix, like a wet mix that's proposed as well, or is the planting schedule just for plugs?
It is just for plugs within the wetlands.
Okay.
I was sharing it through Google Drive and it kicked me out. So I don't know if Jim or Gary, if you have it available, you might be able to pull it up faster than I, but I will.
Yep, I have it pulled up.
Okay, maybe you should share your screen then. Sorry, technical difficulties on my end.
Not a problem. Okay, did it pop up?
Yep.
Yep.
Gary, you're going to need to help me on this.
Yeah, and so sorry, I tried to speak before, but I was muted. There is a seed mix. So this critical area planting is referring to the temporary access road, which is going to be protected with mats, but there is a seed mix. If you scroll to the very bottom, I think it's the last page, maybe page 5, where there is a seed mix proposed to reseed this area that is going to have the mats anyway.
So the area with the access road is going to get the seed mix only, or seed mix and plugs?
This will get just the seed mix. And the plugs are reserved for the wetland restoration area where the sediment's going to be removed.
Okay.
Cool.
Is there a drawback to seeding along with plugs for the replication and the area of removal and of the sand?
You know, I am not sure. I'll be honest, we have not done a lot of work with plugs. I thought this is, it's one project with plugs every couple of years. I thought this would be a great one to try for various reasons based on the small scale and based on the availability of plugs nearby. It actually would probably be a pretty good comparison to see. But we have our standards and specs that are designed to get the site covered in a reasonable amount of time, as long as we meet the plug spacing, as long as we meet the seeding, the appropriate pounds per acre. And I see them both as sufficient in terms of revegetating the site, especially seeing how all the native topsoil is still going to be there, which I envision will produce additional vegetation.
I guess from an experimental point of view, if I'm right that we have 3 areas, I'd maybe just suggest potentially doing a plugs only, a plugs and seed, and a seed for the same reasons, if you think that's a good idea. But
Yeah, if it's something we can look into, and obviously I'd like, if Michael's on board with that, we could look into that. I think we'd be able to do that.
Yeah, I would have no objections.
Cassie, did you say that we did receive a list of feedback or comments from the DEP for this NOI?
Yeah, it's not even really a list. It's like just one kind of comment. So I can share that now, unless you have it right here, Jim. I don't know if you. I thought I saw it pulled up earlier.
Yeah, it was. Let me find that again.
Thank you. And if you can't, I'm happy to do it if you can't.
Should be up now.
Great. Well, maybe we can look at this and then see if anybody has any additional questions. So this looks like, although a file number is being issued, please note the following. The department met on site with the applicant, commission, and NRCS staff on March 10th, 2021 in order to provide technical outreach on this project. Among the significant items discussed were 1, the need to pull back any point source discharges out of the bordering vegetated wetland. 2, the need to provide in situ restoration for BVW areas that have been affected by the slope failure and subsequent deposition of soils. And 3, the need to provide a minimum of 1-to-1 replication for the square footage of BVW lost as a result of the proposed permanent placement of fill per the requirements of 310 CMR 10.55. The proposed stormwater pipe outlet at Gully A still appears to be proposed within the BVW, and the requisite replication of BVW does not appear to have been provided for in the revised NOI materials. So it sounds like he's referring to the fact that there is no outlined or estimated area calculated and indicated on the plan for where that replication is going to take place.
That is my understanding. I will add that to the plan document. And the other one is I will more clearly show on the section view where the end of the stormwater pipe is and where the wetlands are, just to show that we are just outside of the wetlands.
Great. I had one other thought. So we have another project right now that is installing some stormwater systems that are similarly piped and have an outlet near a wetland or a replicated part of a wetland. And one of the things that they've been doing is using logs on site to create level spreaders below the outlets of the pipes to help dissipate the flow of water and slow that down before it enters the wetland. Do you think that that's an approach, using logs or fallen wood from on site that to create some kind of level spreaders or to are there opportunities to use any of that wood or vegetation to continue to, sort of as a terrace or additional control against the erosion in the areas around the areas that you're working?
That could be done, but that would be in addition to the riprap. The using the logs is not as a controlled practice, where when we're using riprap, there's a lot of historical knowledge in how it performs. And where my concern is, we have a very steep slope. If we get erosion at the toe of that slope, we're going to start to lose part of the slope. So I strongly feel that we do need the structural riprap in there. We could utilize logs downstream of that, but at that point, we would have already dissipated the waters to non-erosive velocities. So there really isn't that need, but if there's the desire to keep those larger organics within there, we could have the contractor place that material when he removes the fallen trees down within the wetlands.
What about the other two gullies? Like if they're, I understand that the gully with the outlet is much steeper, and then the flow of water coming out of the outlet would be a fairly high velocity. What about on the other two?
The other two aren't conveying much water down them at all. The surface water is being directed to Gully A. So the only water that would be working down, which is the precipitation that fell straight down onto those gullies. So it's not an appreciable amount of water. So we don't really expect continued erosion from there once we have the riprap in there to plug that gully. If we left it as just sand, what it currently is, and we've had precipitation on it in the water that's just naturally on that slope, we'd have continued erosion.
Got it.
And just so you know, we did look at vegetative processes for those slopes, but due to the steepness of the slope and also due to the forest, so the large amount of shade that we have, it wasn't really an option for us to use.
Maybe unless there's other questions relating to this, the comments from DEP, it might be good to see the plan one more time, Jim, and maybe you can point out, it looked like there was a proposed berm. Is that part of the system to direct the water?
Okay. Yep, let me zoom in on this. It'll take me a second to get you down to where we want to be, and that always happens. Okay. Over to the right. Okay, on this site, we have about a 6-acre drainage area that works its way down to over here. Most of it, over 50% of it, it flows through the low spot in this vicinity, and then it would work its way into the area up here and mainly down Gully C right now. So what we're proposing to do is to put in a diversion berm that runs from here and directs the water to the pipe to convey it down the hill. So that berm itself is going to range from probably 18 inches to 3 feet high, just depending on the grading on the site, and it'll be covered in grass.
So you're not expecting any, or not hardly any water from the top of the hill to get into B and C?
No, just the small area up here will work its way down the hill a little bit, with some concentrating down Gully C, but it's not a significant drainage area at all.
Okay, so most of it's going to be channeled into A.
Correct.
And is that open area, I guess it would be behind the berm, or maybe, I think it's behind the berm. Is that the part that, Michael, you were talking about revegetating with the tech school?
Yes, that's correct. So that area, that whole big grassy area north of the berm is
Here, I'll
going to be
outline it with
repopulated.
So it seems like there is some information missing from the plans, but are there any concerns from the commission, like substantive concerns that would mean that would make you hesitate in terms of considering this as an alternate NOI application? If the plan is continued in order to complete the information that Jim mentioned, in reference to the DEP comments, are there any other considerable concerns or requests that any of the commissioners have that for the applicant to consider making to the plan before being able to approve this?
I'll just stipulate a negative. I don't, so far, I feel like most things have been addressed here that I had a question on anyway.
Yeah, my biggest question was about replication area, but it sounds like we've, as long as the replication area is at least as big as the permanent disturbance, then that should be good.
The only other thing I wanted to mention was as far as the revegetation of that upper area behind the berm, I think we had talked about the potential of using maybe some native shrubs as like a break on the toe there for water cascading over. I don't know, having not looked at that site in person, I don't know how effective that is, but if it is, I think that would be a great thing to consider with the tech school, if it's not already in the plan.
This is fairly minor as well, but in terms of the what appears on the plan, I think the maybe part of the confusion with the EEP is because the wetland boundary is a little bit hard to read as it goes through the plans or exactly where it is in relation to the riprap. And so maybe if that was like a color or the wetland flags themselves were labeled. Usually when we get these plans, they have the wetland flags numbered on them so that we can use those in reference to specific questions or concerns. So I think that would help just illustrate the relationship between the work and the boundary of the wetland.
Okay, I can make that clearer.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of had trouble following it when it started getting into where the pipe came out. I kind of lost where the boundary was, so.
Me too. Even if it were just a darker font or something, just to call it out.
I'll take a look at different ways of showing that. I'll either make it darker, worst comes to worse. I can make another sheet and remove the riprap hatching from that sheet, and just show the outline of where the riprap is, and that may make it a bit easier to see.
Or even just removing the like image on the base, the topographical image on the base. It's helpful here.
Yeah.
Another sheet. you know.
Mhm.
Yep, I'll play around with what would be the best way to present that to make it clear so that you guys can see it.
Do you have the flags on your CAD file?
I would assume so. I don't know if we have the same numbering as they were placed in there. I have to look back at who grabbed that survey and what was provided to us. But we do have the flags because that defined how those boundaries turn.
So I think unless are there any other requests or questions from the commission? Are we ready for a request for a continuance?
If no one has anything else to add, I can go through just quickly what we were hoping to see. And it could either be, I guess, since we're going to have to potentially continue anyways to the next meeting, just administratively, we can try to get those at the next meeting, or we could have them be a pre-construction requirement that these updates and things need to be on there. So we can, I guess if you can get them for the next meeting, that's great, or we can have them be pre-con. But yeah, if you guys are ready, I can go just do a quick review.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. First thing I had, so just generally it's updating it so that it kind of more clearly shows the things that DEP called out in their comment. Because it seems to be we agree that those things are being met, but they're just not as immediately apparent as the way the plan is visualized now. Let's see. A planting plan for the top upper slope area that the tech school is going to do, that I think would be more appropriate for a pre-construction requirement. So just, I don't know if Mike, if that sounds like it's a reasonable timeline, just something saying that is like definitely going to happen, that they're definitely going to do the planting up there before you guys start the project.
So we will not, so that would be a project that would be looking to do in the fall. Planting trees up there, because of course this project has to be completed first,
right?
In order to get the machinery and everything in, and then of course this school's been out of session for the summer, so really it'd be like September, October season that we'd be looking at replanting up there.
Well, maybe then it would make more sense as like a certificate of compliance requirement, that there's some either the submittal of a plan or the completion of that planting.
Yeah, if the commission was okay with just adding it as a part of the completion plan, they're looking at doing like, I don't recall how many trees. It was at least 75 trees that they were looking to replace. So we can certainly commit to a minimum amount.
Okay.
Maybe what we could ask, I want to see how people feel about just having a plan submitted before the planting. So if the text is willing to share their plan whenever it's ready, just before the actual planting happens, and then we just can get a chance to see what the plant list is and provide any feedback to the tech school before the actual planting happens.
Okay.
But not as a pre-construction. It sounds like that's not, the timeline wouldn't work.
Okay, yeah. Does that sound good with you, Mike?
Yeah, that seems very reasonable.
All right, sweet. Okay, cool. The next thing was a determination in this would, I think, will make more sense for pre-construction as well, as a pre-construction requirement, not for the next meeting. A determination of if they can construct Gully A with the long excavator or not. Sounds like that is determined. If you can do it that way, it's great. But you have a plan here that it's part of the plan to do it this other way. So something that's just saying, what you're going to end up doing as a pre-construction requirement. And let's see. Next I had update the plan saying that they're going to be using the organics from the site and soil from the site within the replication and the restoration areas. Next I had something, I don't know if it needs to be a whole operations and maintenance plan, but for Gully A, something that's stating that the Fairgrounds is going to be the ones taking on the responsibility for cleaning up the trash or any kind of major debris accumulation, either at the top or at the sealing basin below for Gully A. Also noted potentially asking for, again, pre-con, not at the next meeting, just some statement of consent from the property owner that they're going to be going through, saying that like, yeah, they're cool with it, just so there's something on the record that they did say they were okay with it. And something about, oh yeah.
Oh, apologies. That last statement that you just said. So do you want just like a letter from them or something, or do you have a specific form?
We don't have a specific form. I guess just a letter where they say like they have permission to like get access as proposed in the plan through my property.
Okay.
Let's see. Next thing was when Fletcher had mentioned trying to do a kind of experimental like planting where maybe one section was just seed mix, another section was seed mix and plugs, and then another section being just plugs. Again, this could also be pre-con, or I guess it could be the next meeting if that can be determined before, but just kind of something finalizing that and how it would be, if that is how you end up doing it. And then last, I think this is the last one, adding to the plans a calculation of the like actual area that is to be replicated and to be lost, I think, and then something about the restoration area. So just like those numbers, just somewhere noted on the plan of just like the square footage. And then I think that was it. So the major things for the next meeting, it sounds like, is the updated plans, just so it's clear that they're meeting DEP's requests, and then these calculation numbers. A lot of other things it seems like probably make sense for pre-construction.
Thanks for that summary, Cassie. I think that was very clear. In that case, would the applicant like to continue till the next meeting to have a chance to revise the plans and include the replication area?
Yes, please. I would request a continuance till 5:25.
Great.
Actually, before I say that, Jim, is that an adequate amount of time for you? I guess I should ask the people who are doing the work first.
Yeah, I need to ask the people who are doing the work first. So I'll let you know tomorrow, Michael, but it's not that much work, so I'll be able to find somebody to make it happen.
Okay, great. So yeah, if it's okay with you, Rachel, we'll continue to 5:25, and if we have to, we'll just continue further if needed.
Great. Well, you know well that you don't have to show up in order to ask for a continuance, so.
Very good. But
it is not a significant amount of work. So hopefully Jim can wrangle the people that need to get it done Is there a motion to accept the request for the continuance?
Motion to accept the request for continuance until 5:25.
Second?
I'll second that.
Great. Are there any objections? Are there any abstentions? Again, I can't necessarily see everybody, so you need to make some noise at the same time. Great. It sounds like there are none, and so that's an unanimous approval, and we'll look forward to seeing the revised plans. So next on our public meeting list is a request for the certificate of compliance for slope stability at rear Linwood Street associated with Franklin County Fairgrounds. This is DEP file number 1680331. I believe that this is a request for the previous NOI that was submitted that you are now withdrawing essentially in order to be able to submit this one. Are there any questions, or are there any information that we need to know about the request, Cassie?
I would just note that, so what they're requesting is an incomplete certificate of compliance, meaning they didn't do any of the work. They're not going to do any work. It's kind of just, they're withdrawing it all.
I'll make a motion to issue a incomplete certificate of compliance for DEP file number 1680331 for slope stability, Franklin County Fairgrounds.
I'll second that.
Okay, are there any objections or discussion? Any abstentions? Okay, looks like that is a unanimous approval as well. So Cassie, you can go ahead and submit the incomplete certificate of compliance.
Great, yeah, it shouldn't take me long, Mike, and then I'll get that sent off to you in DEP as soon as I can.
Okay, great. And is that something I need to bring to the Registry of Deeds to get filed to, or is?
I believe so, and that will
Okay.
lift. Yeah, so I'll get that to you as soon as you can, and then you can just send me the book and page they give you.
Okay, all right. So you'll just let me know when you'll let me know the next steps.
Yeah, yes.
Perfect.
We can do that.
Great.
Thank you all for coming.
Right.
It is really helpful to have all of your voices to clarify things. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for showing up.
Thank you to the board for continuing to work on this project. We're very eager to find the light at the end of the tunnel and be done with it. And you guys have been very helpful in helping us get there. So thanks for all your suggestions and ideas and opportunities to make this project happen. So we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks and getting this done.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Next, we have a public hearing. This is for a notice of intent for a single family home renovation at 1 Birch Street, map 82, lot 26, DEP file number still pending.
Yep, so that's another one that I actually got it after I submitted the agenda, so let me just look real quick. I do have a, oh, you know what, I'll tell you when I have it ready, because I have it logged me out, so at some point I will state what the DEP file number is for the record here in a second.
Great. Is there a representative of the applicant with us?
Yes, the applicant's here first, representing herself. I'm Harriet Ewing, also known as Hasso Ewing. I do have a DEP number, which is 168-0340.
Thank you, so I appreciate that.
Yep. And Cassie, can you put up the drawing?
Yeah, I can, and I'll just say also too that there were no comments from DEP on this. They just issued the file number without any comments. So, okay, hold on just a second. I'm going to share.
Okay, so what we have is about a 970 square foot bungalow on Birch Street. It's sort of at the end of it where it, the dead end. And at the south end of the property is a culvert. Southeast, I guess it is, corner of the property is a culvert and the stream that runs through. It's an intermittent stream. I've walked down earlier in the spring. I walked down right down the thread of it with there was no water in it. Now there's a little bit of water in it. I've got the flags on there, and then you'll see the dotted line, which is the limit of work. What we need to do is we need to take off the back porch, a back deck, the front porch, that whole structure that's on the front needs to, the roofs are staying, but everything underneath I think is gonna have to go. And then where there's the circle kind of in the middle of the plan is where the foundation is being repaired. So the contractor needs to come in from the north side of the property, kind of go underneath where that deck is to get to that part of the foundation. I think the foundation is probably the most sensitive part of the project because he does have to dig out a frost wall and rebuild that corner. So that's where he needs to get the machinery in there. And he'll be stockpiling some soils too. It's all within that limit of work dotted line. And it's up to you all what you want us to do as far as hay bales and silt fence or. The whole property is actually within 100-foot buffer. So everything that I do on this piece of property is within jurisdiction. So I think that's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions, fire away.
Is your limit of work dashed line here within the 25-foot by any chance? Do you know what that distance is from the wetland to the limit of work?
No. And it could be close to the edge of the flags in some areas. I didn't put that on there.
Cassie, I think you might zoom farther in than what we can see the scale of the map at. If you could just zoom out for a second, we might be able to estimate. Well, it says 1 to 20 inch, but there's no scale bar, so.
Right, there's no scale bar.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I would say it probably is pretty close to being within the 25 feet of the flags.
How are they going to access that corner again?
They're going to come in.
road?
They're going to come in on the north side. That's town. That's the property line that's on the north abuts a paper road of the town of Greenfield. So that whole upper rectangle is town property, and we can use it for parking. It's unpaved, packed soil. So they'll be coming in on that side and staying within the limit of work area and going down, right, that's where the arrow is now. That's the access.
Okay. Okay.
It's gonna be a relatively small machine. It's not anything huge.
And you noted that the deck is to be removed. Are you rebuilding it or it's just going to be removed permanently?
Taken away. It's going away.
Yeah, and you mentioned the deck and a porch. Are those the same thing or are those different?
No, the porch is underneath the eaves of the house.
So there's a porch in the front and the back,
Yes.
and they're both coming down, or I mean both being
Yeah, they both need to
being
be rebuilt.
Okay, okay. But the little thing on the end there is coming off completely.
Yes. So we're getting some benefit, I guess, by taking that deck off, getting it back, backing that away from the wetland. I want to say the back of this property is it's pretty much all invasive plant material. I'm finding some ferns starting to come up, but I think there's a trillium and I think there's a jack in the pulpit, but the rest of it is knotweed. And there's garlic mustard in there and Norway maples, and it's been used kind of as a dump site. The house was abandoned for 2 years before we purchased it. And prior to that, it wasn't treated very well. The whole property wasn't treated very well. So it's my desire to kind of get this thing back to just native plants and in good shape. So I'm going to be on the contractor as far as making sure that he's really careful about staying close to the house with any machinery and not disturbing any soils unless he has to.
You had mentioned an intermittent stream. Is that really close to the BVW edge? It seems like I'm looking at the site photos on the Google Drive, Cassie. It looks like it's just a really tiny topographic swale that's the stream. So
It
I was
is.
curious.
It's not really it's not really a swale, and it doesn't really flow. It is on wetland maps in town, but it is intermittent and very thin.
Yeah, I'll note that it doesn't come up on Mass Author, it doesn't come up on the city GIS. I was only able to see it on USGS Stream Stats. And it is intermittent listed there as such. But yeah, it's very small area, so the BVW is just kind of around it.
Okay.
And I have the the delineation notes if you guys want to see that.
And it looks like from the photos, it's not very steep between your limit of work and the wetland line. Is that right, Hasso?
No, it's not.
No, it's not right, or no, it's not steep.
Oh, yeah, no, it's not terribly steep. No, there is one small little area that's sort of in the, like, off that deck where they've been dumping yard trash for a while. So it's a little bit of a little bit of human made material and a lot of sticks and leaves and stuff like that. So that's where there would be, if there's any drop, that's where it would be, but it's basically an old brush pile.
And what's the timing? We are hopeful to the timing for all of this work, Hasso.
Well, as soon as we get your approvals, it'll be about 2 months, they said, until they can complete the project.
And do you have a plan for when the work is completed behind the house? But like, are you going to be reseeding with lawn back there, or is that going to be? You mentioned in the in your narrative that you would be planting with native plants. Would that just be perennial beds, like up to the back of the house?
Well, what I would like to do is from the stairs on the north side, that little short bit of stairs that comes out to the kind of rock wall that's that long line on the south. Yep. That whole back part of the property, I don't want to touch. I don't want to mow. I would like it to just be naturally vegetated, and there would be a path that would go to the door that's in that corner where the repair's being done. But yeah, I sort of I suppose that I might seed it. I'm not sure what I would seed it with. The other option is just putting down wood chips, because there's so many invasives back there that would stabilize it, and then at least then when new material comes through, I can pull stuff out that I don't want. But so it would either be with wood chips, or we put down some hay and some sort of conservation mix, I would imagine, something like that. I don't want to put lawn down there.
And what are you proposing for erosion control?
I would like to just use silt fence, if that's possible.
Like a straw wattle or just silt fence?
Well, we could use a straw wattle too. That's what the contractor actually was hoping, that that's maybe what we could use. You tell me.
And would that just be along the limit of work is where they'd establish it?
That's what I would imagine, yeah.
I mean, given the lack of slope, I think either one would be sufficient, as long as it's well secured and gap free.
That shouldn't be a problem.
You're thinking like a 12-inch wattle? Fletch? Or are you saying, oh, like a 6-inch wattle plus silt fence? Or are you just thinking a bigger wattle and no silt fence?
Oh, I just thought they were going to stake down bales as one option versus a synthetic fence with stakes in the other.
Okay.
Neither of those seemed fine, but I hadn't thought more specifically than that.
The wattles are made out of all organic material, right? I don't need to do any, there are no plastics in it.
You can get a couple different kinds. It's cheaper to get a straw wattle that's wrapped in a nylon plasticky material. The ones that have a coir, coconut coir or hemp type twine are more expensive and heavier. But if you wanted to get the cheaper kind, you could just cut the plastic off when you're done and then spread the hay or straw, if that's the way you're going to go.
Okay, yeah, I just wouldn't want the plastic to remain. I would like to be able to easily get rid of it, yeah.
They're
Okay.
really heavy once they're on site for a long time. They get really rain sodden. But if you can use like a box cutter and just get that plastic netting off, or get the ones with the biodegradable twine and leave them on site for a longer time.
Okay. So are you saying that you'd like to have the wattle and the silt fence, or just, I'm not clear.
As far as my comment goes, I was saying, given the lack of significant slope, that one or the other would be fine, but I defer to the other commissioners.
I think the silt fence would be the least expensive, is that right?
I would think so.
Maybe comparable to a cheaper straw wattle, but it's a lot more trash.
Right.
Evan, is there any other, like, are there any tree removal or other vegetation removal in or outside of the scope of work that you're hoping to do as part of this?
Not as part of this filing. The property backs up to Emily Street condominiums, and I think when the condominiums were put in, the construction that happened around the area, there was a lot of invasives that came in, let's just say. And they're on the condominium property and on this property. And what I'm hoping to do is to come to you with a separate filing to talk to you about invasive management. And then also the removal of some standing dead elms.
More elk hunters might be disappointed there, but
Say again?
oh, that dead elms are I guess good habitat for morel mushrooms, which are very valued. So maybe you can steal a few before they go down.
I'm willing to leave some of them there, so there's some of the stumps standing. That's fine.
Hassel, that sounds fine. I think you probably are aware that you're only allowed to have one NOI open, one permit open for a property at a time. So unless you're completing this one and then opening that one, it would be an amendment request.
Yeah, I think I'd probably just do another one because I just want to get the construction done on this house and then talk to you and the condo people and the neighborhood about this whole little corner here with the invasive. So I need to coordinate with the condo to do that whole filing, so it'll be separate.
Got it.
One thing that I should note that just was realized today was that the abutter notifications for this notice of intent were not able to go out ahead of this hearing. And so what I was hoping to do in an administrative sense, just because I found that, the hearing, everything was already set up and it was on the agenda. So what I'm hoping to do is have those get sent out, get confirmation of those getting set out, and then continue this hearing to the next meeting, just so that those people have a time to submit comments if they have them, and watch this recording / read the minutes and understand, what happened in the discussion. Because I'll, have access to the recordings now, so I can make that available to people as well. Because that was something that, in an administrative sense, wasn't able to be completed in time. Does that sound like something that makes sense to everyone else to do to kind of meet that requirement?
Mhm.
So, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll make note of that at the end.
So Cassie, do you think we would be able to close it at the next meeting?
Well, I guess it's up to the commission. I don't know if they have any other questions. I feel bad because I kind of threw that in there in the middle. I just thought of it. The commission may have more discussion they want to do. But yeah, so basically, if they complete their discussion today at the next hearing, at the next meeting, that's when they would officially actually vote to issue an order of conditions.
Okay.
So other than maybe noting the 25-foot no disturb on the plan, are there any other requests for Hasso or things that she should consider before coming back next week or next meeting, not next week?
I guess one thing that goes along with the 25-foot no disturb zone, I know you said there was going to be some soil stockpiled on the site, and I was wondering if that could be outside of the 25-foot no disturb zone and maybe include where that's going to be on the plan, just so it's clear.
Yeah, I asked the contractor if we could do that, because at one point he said to me that what he could do is he could put the soil up on top of that stone wall. But he was just concerned about committing to that without talking to the guy who's running the machine, so. Yes, I think we can keep it out of, we'll try to keep it out of the 25. We'll figure out a way to keep it out of the 25.
In the absence of getting a survey, could we just maybe kind of pin flag it in the field just as a visual marker for the contractors, or just with a measuring tape, old-fashioned style?
You're talking about for the 25-foot no disturbance zone?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, it was like a pre-construction requirement, just
Yeah, just kind of as a visual, limit of work kind of barrier for the contractor to keep in mind just in the field.
Oh, so flag the 25-foot setback in the field.
Yeah, just old-fashioned style with a measuring tape and just some kind of field marker. What works for you?
Yep.
That will be helpful also to determine whether there are intended pieces of that limit of work within the 25-foot. Like if the limit of work can be established at the 25-foot, that would be preferable. If that doesn't, it's hard to tell what it looks like. Maybe that corner of the house is like 28 feet.
So I think from the corner of the house to straight out to the limit of work is 15 feet. So you can figure it's another 15 to those flags.
Okay, so there might be enough room to flag the 25-foot no disturb zone and make sure that the limit of work stays outside of that.
Well, I mean, if I have to go 10 more feet, if it's 15 feet from the flag to the, yeah, I'll have to go out there and take a look at it. I'll check, but he's telling me that he doesn't think he can do that limit of work any closer to the house. So I'm just worried that the 25 might be inside that limit of work or outside, whatever.
Do you think you could get that clarity from him by the time for the May 25th meeting?
Absolutely, no problem. I'll do my best to get that outside the 25-foot.
Okay.
Wherever possible.
Getting bumped out, Cassie.
Who, me?
Yeah. You just got signed out.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's so crazy. I don't know why. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Yeah, I don't know. This program is better for my computer, but it's still like struggling.
So maybe the last piece that it would be good to clarify for Hassover before next meeting would be exactly what type of erosion control we'd like to see. The straw wattle with either of the the netting seems like it might be sufficient in this case. That would leave you with less trash, but what do some other folks think? Kristen, did you have an opinion on that?
My only thought would just be the bigger the better. If you're gonna do just straw wattle and not silt fence, I would suggest a 12-inch, not the 6-inch, and maybe have extra on site to encircle the soil stockpile just in case something happens, and stake it 10 foot on center. But I'm open to comments from the commission on that, if that doesn't seem sufficient to the rest of the commission.
I think given the lack of slope there, that seems like it would be sufficient, the 12-inch straw wattle. Normally my preference is compost stocks. I think they're the best that there is, and you can empty the compost on site. You end up with just the sock afterwards, but in this case, I think that the straw would probably be sufficient since it's so flat. If there aren't any other comments or suggestions for Hasso, I think we could entertain a request for continuance. Is that what you would like to do, Hasso?
Sounds good to me.
I'll
Make a
make
motion.
Sorry, I didn't know you were asking me.
It has to be requested by the applicant before we can motion to approve it, so.
Oh, okay.
I'll make a motion to approve continuation of 1 Birch Street notice of intent until next meeting.
Second.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So it looks like that was unanimously approved, and we'll see you the next meeting, Hasso.
In a couple weeks. All right. Thank you very much,
Thanks.
everybody.
Thanks. Okay, moving along. Enforcement updates and other business, Cassie.
Yeah, so once again, I don't have any enforcement updates. Apologize. I got kind of swamped with everything from the last meeting. So again, really the main thing that's pending is 286 Plain Road, checking up with them, trying to figure out what, if any, like remediation work they need to do. We're wondering about like planting, things like that. So hopefully next meeting I will have an act together. And then the other thing, so the next general business item is we have some people here who are, I don't know if you guys remember, we were talking about the potential, there's a group of people interested in trying to do some knotweed removal at the Green River Conservation Area. It's the area like kind of a crossway from the swim area, the beach area. And so I've given them some information about what you guys would probably want to see and what you want to, more information you'd like about that proposal before, saying go ahead or starting to get permits and things like that going. And they have kind of a preliminary proposal they'd like to share. I'll turn it over to you guys. I don't know who wants to be the main presenter.
I will. My name's Helena. I've been working with a small group of people in Greenfield who are very interested and concerned about the knotweed in the Green River swimming and recreation area. And we wanted to present, we put together a map of the areas we're interested in working on. Do you want me to try and share that, or can you share that, Cassie?
You should, if you could share it. I may center.
I haven't used Webex before, so I'll have to see if I can figure that out.
Should be on the bottom is the share option, and then it'll bring up a pop-up menu, and you can choose the window that is, you know, showing the map, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, because I have it open in my browser, so I'm trying to see where all this stuff is. Ah, there it is. Okay. Screen. I guess I'll share my entire screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we're seeing your email right now.
Okay, great. Go to documents. Cool. So, okay. So for some reason it's not letting me, or I can't see you guys. So anyway, but this is our map. So as long as you guys can see this.
Yes, we can see it, and yeah, you won't be able to see us while you're doing it.
So okay, so I'm going to talk about this area here that's highlighted in yellow. And then I'm going to hand it over to another group member to talk about this area in blue that's over here. So we are presenting this yellow area here across the river by the picnic table area as an opportunity to work with community members in the knotweed removal process. And it would give the community a chance to get involved with the area and take care of it, because I know there's a lot of connection there. And we were thinking about presenting this as an educational opportunity in the sense of providing information about the knotweed and how to remove it. There is a report that I had also sent to Cassie, which I believe she had shared with you along with this PDF document that I put together. There's a report that was done by a group in Connecticut called CT Invasive Plant Working Group, and they used a method for knotweed removal, which involved cutting the knotweed 3 times a year for approximately 3 years to completely get rid of it. And the way that they did this was they cut it at the base of the plant and they bagged it in black bags, and you have to let it solarize for 2 weeks before it can be composted or burned, however you want to get rid of it. And this proved to be very successful for them. And this is the method that we plan on using for this area. And we're not quite sure yet about how we are going to go about recruiting volunteers. It might be a similar method to how Greenfield Tree Committee presents their community tree plantings every year. And we would set up 3 dates for knotweed removal, and the suggested first day is either somewhere between late May to early June, and then again later in the spring / early summer, and a third time sometime in the fall. So at the beginning of the first day for the community knotweed removal, we would provide some educational background about knotweed, how invasive it is, how to recognize it, and then provide a demonstration on how to cut and bag the knotweed to prevent any of the excess material from being kept on that area for potential rerouting. And another way, Nancy, another member that I've been working with, has spoken with Christy Moore at the DPW, and Christy says, have at it. So she gave us approval, so as long as Concom okays it. And I believe they will also take the cuttings of the knotweed after it's been solarized at the transfer station. And we still haven't quite decided how the bags are going to get hauled away. And I was thinking it could also be presented as another educational opportunity, in that if the bags, maybe not for the full 2 weeks, but they could stay on site for a short period of time, and there could be a sign there that explains why they're there for those who are coming by and are curious about what's going on with the project. And I think that's pretty much it for this area. And I have a friend, Wisty, who is going to speak about the blue area. So if she wants to chime in, she is welcome to do so.
Great. I'm Wisty Rohrabacher, and my partner and I are focusing on that blue area. The main differences in what we're doing is that at this point, there are 2 of us who are focusing on a smaller area. And given that we're able to focus on a smaller area, we're able to, well, a couple things. One is our intention is to go in virtually once a week. And it takes us about an hour and a half or 2 hours once we get in and look and do, and I'll tell you the extent that we're doing. But it's just to, again, cut the knotweed that's growing, and to really watch. Our area is considerably smaller. I haven't measured it with a tape yet, but I'm going to guess it's about 30 by 40 or 50 feet. So one of the things that we can do is compare the area in which we're cutting with the adjacent areas to see what kind of effect our cutting has done. There's a lot of debate around whether or not to try to dig roots out, whether or not to use herbicides. Our experience in managing some other property that we had in the Ozark Mountains was that the conservation people said if we could keep vegetation from feeding those roots for 3 years, that it would kill off those roots. And that was the experience, in fact, that we had. So we're hopeful that that will be the case. So we don't have any intention of messing with the soil. We're just going to go in and cut the knotweed down. And we will cut down, whether we just went in for our 2nd week, and where we had cut some stalks, they had grown already a foot up. Other ones, they were just starting to come up. We will cut all of those, and we're going to keep track of the number that we cut so that we can see is more sprouting up. Our area is small enough that we can keep tabs on the amount of knotweed that we're cutting. We've also designated, just with some tape, a couple of plants that we're going to look at right in our area, and then a very close adjacent area where we won't be cutting. We've designated a few plants as though it's a control area. So it's like, okay, in this area where we're cutting regularly, this is happening, and we can record that. In this area, which is the control area, we're going to measure how high it keeps going every week. And, if it gets thicker, more dense, we can watch that. Another kind of advantage that we have with this is with our first cutting, we simply cut the plants. and we let them fall. And our intention was to watch that really closely because there's debate on how much you have to get rid of the cuttings. And when we went back yesterday, in fact, those plants were drying up, and what we're watching is whether or not there's any indication of any root involvement, new rooting off of what we've cut. And there was a person, I don't know his last name, I have an email from him in Newton. About 6 or 7 years ago, he did a program of knotweed removal, and he found that if he just cut like we're doing and let that fall, that there wasn't any root generation. In fact, they created a compost pile on site with the clippings, and he regularly, for the same reasons we are, check, and didn't find any root generation. And that information is pretty significant. One of the other things is where we're looking is very close to the river's edge. The knotweed is pretty thick there. Just a little away from there, there's a whole lot of goutweed, and the knotweed is really encroaching fast. In that area, you can see lots of trillium, you can see false Solomon seal, toothwort. There's stuff that you can still see that's growing. And one of the things that we want to do, given that it's just the two of us right now, is we want to be able to go in there and clip in a certain diameter around those established wildflowers. And what we want, and then we want again to have a control group. For instance, there's some trillium that must be 1.5 feet tall. They're really huge. And then very close by, there are more trillium about that size, but they're getting increasingly crowded out by the knotweed that's growing right now. And what we would like to be able to do is compare, even just by keeping that clipped, does that allow those plants to put down seed, to start germinating, putting up more wildflowers so that the plants that are already there can build their populations and be saved, and maybe eventually, take over from where the knotweed is. So that's our intent, is to do that somewhat more intense, regular, weekly observation and work. There are potentially several people who are interested in helping us. And there are people who go to that area very often and have watched with horror what's happened over the last 25 years to this area. And when they spotted us in and said, "What are you doing?" and we told them what we hope you would tell us would be okay, they said, "Oh boy, I really want to get in here and help you with this because blah, 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 blah." So that's my story. That's it.
Thank you, Wisby.
Yes.
Are there any questions for Helena or Wisby? I have. I'm going to request annotating. I'm not sure why it's not letting me request annotating here.
I wonder if it's because if the request potentially is going to Elena. Let me see though. I should be able to
I think it's grayed out. You can't even request.
Yeah, it's grayed out for some reason.
I wonder if it's because it's not the host sharing, maybe.
Oh, I see. I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm giving all participants the ability to annotate. See what that does. It might be because Helena's screen sharing, it still won't do it, but
I think so, yeah.
Seems silly.
Yeah, I don't have
It
that.
might be. What I could, or maybe Cassie could, is put this in a shared Google Drive folder, and you guys could make edits in that folder.
Yeah, I can, you can stop sharing and I'll try pulling it up on mine.
Do you already have it, Cassie? Is it easy for you to share?
I think so.
Okay, because the annotation was working before when you were sharing.
Right. So I should be able to do it.
If not, I'll try and use words to ask my question.
Use your words.
In the meantime, Whiskey,
There we go.
could you potentially give a just a really quick review of the treatment, the treatments for that patch that you're working on?
Really,
the
the
different
only-
ones that.
Yeah, the treatment for where the wildflowers are particularly?
Well, you had started with cutting some and letting them fall, and then you were talking about comparing it to a nearby one that I didn't know if it was just sort of the knotweed as it grows normally, or if you were going to do a different cut to the adjacent. Okay.
On where that little blue area is, that's just to cut it and let it fall, as long as it doesn't root or anything, and it looks like it won't, but we will watch that very closely.
Yeah.
And then the
So there
others we're observing are just adjacent plants, really about 6 feet away, that are just simply growing.
Got
It's
it.
just an area that we're not working with. It's past the boundary that we've determined that we're going to work in.
Okay, got it. But so some of those plants though were adjacent to the cut, so you could see the difference, I think you
Yes.
were saying? Okay,
Yeah, they're about 6 feet away from where we're cutting. So,
got it.
so the circumstances are, the same. The soil's the same. The conditions are the same. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does this, okay. I just got,
Aha, I have pen.
hey, nice.
My question is whether, oh wow, look at that pen here. That's what that did. My question is whether this area is also Japanese knotweed.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
All the way along the bank is, and not just there, but see where that blue area is? It's just in from the edge of where the picnic tables are. And the knotweed is starting to fill that up. So
like down this way?
Actually is growing from where these yellow areas are in that whole section. And you can just watch it marching in. It's thickest right here on the banks. But as you walk in, like where these other paths are, there's a path from the picnic area into where I'm talking about, and it's a path people use. And within a month, the knotweed will be arching overhead. And you have to tunnel your way in through that path. That's how thick it gets.
Yeah, I can confirm that when I was doing the GPS mapping out there, I couldn't get through. I could tell there was a path, but it was just like impassable. Now I'm realizing that must have all been knotweed.
I think it spreads during flood events. It just goes all up and down the riverbanks. All the rivers we have around here, it's becoming colonized with knotweed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even the woman right before us was talking about knotweed in her poor yard.
It likes disturbance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I know you're working on a small area, Wisty, but leaving it loose. And again, I'm not sure how far down, whether you need the root material for it to propagate. I think I've heard otherwise, but I don't know either way. But like, if you do just leave it there and it gets washed away, I don't know that's a huge concern since it is so prolific here. But is there anything we could think of to leave it there, but also secure it? Or
sure,
I don't know if it's worthwhile doing that or what, but just a thought.
Yeah. You can tell, particularly in the spring, with the winter melt, that there's probably some runoff even in that area. But right now, the floor of that area is solid canes that are just lying there, and they're like this thick. diameter would be like this, but it's just all this material that's lying there from, you know, where it was growing up. So what I'm trying to say is we can really watch and investigate what you're saying. I kind of think, you know, like if you could see the amount that it was already dried up over the week, and it wasn't necessarily a hot week or anything. I know, you know, just for research sake and for knowledge sake, I think it'll be good for us to find out what happens. I hear what you're saying, and I'll double check that because I don't want to contribute in any way.
I guess I was sort of thinking it was adjacent to the water, but this is off the water.
No.
Is there a buffer? So there's more
Yes,
knotweed
it
that'll
is
catch
off the
this
water.
knotweed if it
Gotta
does
be-
move.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to estimate right now. It's probably, I'm going to guess, and I'll measure so that I have the exact measurements. My guess is it's about 80 feet, 100 feet. Maybe a little bit more than that from the, you know, along the top, and then there's a bank there.
Yeah, it's pretty far from. Yeah, it's pretty far from the embankment on the river. So it's not. I think the potential for it to wash away is very low.
Got it.
That was a good question, though.
Well, thank you for thinking of this and thinking of our river. And I applaud your empirical approach, Wisty. This is a difficult problem. It sounds like your approach is to basically deprive the roots of any above ground. Okay, gotcha.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Repeatedly over the growing season, right?
Yeah.
The main.
Yeah, and this will
thing.
This will hopefully prevent it from spreading. Is the idea. Yeah.
Also, our intention is to do it for several years.
Yeah.
If we can demonstrate by keeping accurate count, if we can demonstrate that the first year is really intensive, and then I hope what I can do is come back and tell you less intensive, less intensive, less intensive, then hopefully more people would be willing to almost adopt an area and be able to stick with it and see what happens. But just like Helena was saying, that over the course of time in this Newton project too, they did the same thing with cutting it less often than we're talking about, but over the course of a number of years, again with just cutting, the knotweed, they had to still go back once in a while and cut very, very, very few plants, but it starts to starve them out apparently. So, so this will give a more intense examination.
Can you remind me of the frequency of the cut again that you're planning?
The one in Newton?
No, what you planned here.
We're doing it once a week.
Okay.
Yeah, that's for their blue area.
Yeah.
The yellow area will be more like that Newton project in the way that it'll be cut 3 times a year for at least 3 years.
Got it. Yeah, I guess my only other concern would be like, you know, based on nothing scientific, but just my own observation, like the felling of those big pieces that you're talking about, I wouldn't be super concerned about those like the hollow stalks putting down roots. Maybe they do, I don't know. But like the tender green shoots that come up that you're going to cut because it's going to be so frequent, I wonder if those are viable.
So far,
they're above ground.
What I have seen, and it hasn't been extensive, is that no, it's it's the root. You know, like if there's any root matter. So there's even a suggestion, like if you're using clippers, don't reach your clippers under the dirt. Besides that, you'll ruin your clippers. Don't get any potential root matter in there because that might then take hold. But as long as it's the stalk,
got it.
That it's not going to, even if it's just a little guy, like the little guys that we saw, you know, that only were like this big when we clipped them. They were just all shriveled up today. Yesterday, they had been cut the week before.
Got it.
We're taking photographs too, so that we can come back and let you see what's happening. It's not that whole blue area, it's just in that general blue area.
I like the methods that you're proposing. I feel like we might see enough knotweed that I would question the necessity of creating control patches and leaving any. It seems like there might be enough on site that whatever you felt like needed to be cut could just be cut. I like the scientific approach. I'm not sure it's necessary to intentionally leave anything behind. It sounds like there's plenty around that you won't get a chance to deal with. And then my other thought is, it sounds like the success that you're talking about of leaving the stalks behind is what exactly is the purpose of leaving the stalks behind? Is the idea that it smothers like other roots coming up? Because it seems like it could also just compost and feed the roots that are there. Like, I'm not really sure what the point of leaving the stalks behind is, especially if there is the potential for them to wash off in a rainstorm or a wind event.
Okay, let's say that they're not going to wash off, but here's part of the benefit is, for instance, if it turns out, from what we all are doing on both projects, if it turns out that in fact by not feeding the roots, with the vegetation, that it's going to kill off those roots, if we could cut the plants and compost them even on site, we could be creating good compost areas. We could be using that to smother out, like what if you could put a knotweed compost area on top of a horrible area of goutweed that you could smother out with the knotweed stuff. It's going to be a ton of work hauling off that knotweed, and it goes into a landfill, or perhaps it gets burned. But if it turns out that there's nothing wrong with leaving it right there, my guess is that there would be some very good ecological uses for it in terms of creating compost piles, and leaving it there. That would be another level to explore. But the first thing, able to guarantee that no roots have been created with these things, so that you truly know. So it's not.
Are you going to be able to tell that if you're putting those cuttings on top of the roots of knotweed that you're expecting to sprout? Are you going to be able to tell that what is sprouting is the previous roots that are cut and not the new shoots?
My guess is and I'm so glad that we've done it 2 weeks, because just seeing, imagine that you had a stand of Trillium, and by accident you cut a couple 1 week, and you came back the next week and the poor old sorry things looked all limp, and you knew they were so dead and so bad. That's the way this knotweed that we cut it. It's like if you pick it up, I mean, it was totally limp, totally. Yeah.
That's a scientific term.
So you could,
Yeah.
you plan on just sort of examining the horizontal shoots that you cut and just looking for any signs of root growth.
Yeah.
And is that what I'm hearing, or?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, in fact, it's kind of fun because seeing what we saw yesterday it was like, Judy's my partner who I'm doing it with. Judy and I kept saying, oh my goodness, look at this, look at this, look at this. And it was so exciting, you know, what we saw, except that some of that we cut had already grown that much. So we'll
Is
see.
there a reason, do you feel like creating a kind of a like if the benefit from leaving the vegetation behind is to see whether you can safely compost this material on site without it spreading, is there a reason why you wouldn't like create a little compost area, like with, you know, some wooden stakes and some chicken wire or something around it to actually contain it, like a little.
Oh, that would be really, that would be exciting. That would be cool. But the first thing I want to know is if they are lying on the dirt. You know, like I really want to be able to come back and tell you that after a month, or I mean, I don't want to come back too soon because these are long meetings. But you know, if I could come back at some reasonable point and be able to say, we watch these once a week, and I'm telling you, they were so dried up and decayed, and not one root showed up, that would be really good news. And then if I said to you, and now we would really like to create a compost pile, then we could tell you that whatever was on the bottom of that compost pile were the dried up old ugly things, and they weren't going to root. You know, we don't want to participate in creating one new root or one new knotweed plant.
Mm-hmm. I just want to, you know, thinking about that in terms of having the, like there be a compost pile and some chicken wire, I would double check with Christy. I mean, I get that this is technically, this conservation area is the Conservation Commission's like management, but she might have like some questions or concerns or issues about creating something like that so close to their recreation facility across the way.
You know what? And that was never our intent. I just said too many words. It's kind of like you're not supposed to say something unless you're asked. So that has never been our intent to create that compost pile. That was just an example of how this person has discovered that there are no roots that come up on the stalk. So thank you. If we ever wanted to do that, we would for sure check with Christy.
I mean, the main benefit to not having to remove it, I think, is just to reduce labor of since the cutting is incredibly easy.
Yeah.
It's the removal and bagging that's most of the work. I guess one other thing I would just encourage is you just very loosely potentially monitor the weather. So you know, mainly precipitation and sort of how dry or not things are, and even if that's just a screenshot of the forecast or something over the week, so you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But because I wonder if it will root under certain choice conditions, but not typically, maybe.
That's a really good idea. We're working on creating a spreadsheet to have the date and, you know, the number of plants, blah, 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 and to put in what the weather conditions have been during the week and are that day would give additional information. So that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Great.
Do we know just kind of, you know, I guess I would ask the commission, do you have anything like that you would request for like next steps? Would permitting be required? Like what do they need to give you all? Obviously this isn't like the final form, but maybe that would be helpful.
I think you know, a written document that lay out the scheduling and the work plans would be very useful. Yeah, and then just, you know, that includes that map to reference.
Okay.
I had one like sort of common concern about the yellow area where you said you might leave the bags there, which, I mean, I love the whole trying to educate, but I'm also concerned about people who are jerks, basically, and will
that's true.
Rip the bags open,
there's a lot of there.
You know, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my only concern. I mean, it'd be nice if in a perfect world to educate everybody, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's understandable. Yeah, we can
Um,
certainly figure out a way to get them off site.
well, or just, or at least maybe just really limit to like one bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Is this something,
The other concern is similarly just monitoring the weather events. Like if that area is a lot closer to the river. And so it'd be really sad to come back and find that bag gone and not know if someone took it or if it washed downstream.
Right.
So that was my other thought with leaving the bags. Again, I agree, it's a good education, but it might not be, there might be some risks involved.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, Erica, people would think that it was an approved dumping ground and you would come and find other people's bags of trash added to the pile.
That's true.
No.
Yeah. That's another thought too. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Just bring your trash down to the river week.
Oh no, that'd be awful.
Well, and then you'd have the people who were like, calling the cops because they thought there was like a dead body in it or something, and
Oh no. All right. We're definitely getting those bags off site now.
Sorry. I mean, I know it's a lot more work, but
No, it's fine. It was just a thought.
I have to get off site eventually anyway, so.
Not anymore. Okay, well, we can do that.
is this something we could do an administrative approval for, or RDA, or what do you guys think? Is altering vegetation in the BVW, but it's minor vegetation?
I know that plantings are a minor activity. This is just, I don't know if it's such a big area and has so much, could have a lot of public interest. Maybe an RDA would be appropriate. But I'm just curious, if we sent the RDA to DEP, they might be like, we need more than that. I don't know.
It's not a limited project or anything like that, right?
Well, yeah, just briefly, most of the minor activity stuff that I know about, it talks about, explicitly it says plantings are fine, and that's exempt, riverfront area and buffer zone, but it's also floodplain, it's also removing a lot of vegetation in theory. So I don't know, I guess I could do more research. I could call Mark Stinson and ask him.
That would definitely get us a good guiding opinion there.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually asked about this and during the MACC conference. I asked in like a couple of different classes that I did, and I was specifically asking about, if it was in like a wetland, if it was in a wetland or, resource area like that. And the feedback I got was that they were generally leaning towards an RDA, and maybe even coming up with like a generic order of conditions that you would generally have for, like if you were doing this over and over, like you could have, for for this type of removal, you're going to do this, and this, and then we would just have that, like, for any future projects that are the same type. But that was the feedback I got there.
That makes sense. It is riverfront.
Yeah, I'll ask Mark and see what I can get as a better update in terms of what permitting, if any, would be needed.
Yeah, I know that there are some towns that specifically specify that manual invasive species removal is exempt from their town ordinance, but I don't think that our town ordinance says anything about that. So we can something to consider.
Yeah, I have our ordinance open right now, and I don't see anything in there. I was doing words there just now. I don't see anything.
Anyone else
Yeah,
here in the?
so the project is really entirely focused on the removal of existing vegetation. Are you planning at some point in the future to go in and do like actual plantings in those areas? Or is it more of a, like you were saying, Wisty, that you had observed already some native plants in the area. Are you hoping to sort of observe some natural regeneration there, or are you planning to go in and intervene with plantings?
At this point, what I'm hoping, there are lots of wildflowers in there. Lots, not just in quantity, but in a huge variety of plants. And what I'm hoping is that, given conditions, that you can see where a lot of things are being smothered out right now. Like if you would have gone in 3 weeks ago, you would have seen so many different plants that you'll never find in another 2 weeks. And, along the path and, just even inside 15 feet from where the path goes in. And so partly, and I know that, I think it was in the report that Helena was talking about, where it ended up with all kinds of plants. The seed started germinating and coming in, and that all kinds of just native wildflowers started coming right back into the area. I mean, that place is one of the things that's so scary, watching where that knotweed is encroaching. You go in there and you can look, and there's sessile bellwort, and there's wild ginger, and there's all this hepatica, and all this toothwort. I mean, it goes on and on and on just by standing there, turning your head and looking. And that's going to be all drowned out in just a couple of years if this stuff isn't brought under control. I mean, it's, if you know wildflowers at all and you go in there, you just almost want to throw up because of what's happening to the ground. Yeah. So that my biggest hope is that things that are already there will start expanding, will be protected. Oh, they're wonderful stands. It's incredible. Yeah.
Good.
Go ahead, Nancy. I think you have your hand raised. Your actual hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to say a few words about the yellow area, which is a different circumstance than the blue area. So my understanding is that that the knotweed actually will make the riverbank more likely to erode. It's not like vegetation that holds it all together. And so, yes, absolutely, we need to replant to stabilize that bank. There's one area that I've been working on in Maine where they've replanted with a native milkweed. But we, obviously we need to do a little bit of research and decide. But it's a very sunny area as opposed to the area which Wisty's talking about, which is more in the wood. So they're very different areas. And there's no, we haven't seen any indication of existing wildflowers or native plants within that the not weeded area along the along the bank. So they're two very different circumstances. But we have 3 years to figure it all out, or at least 2.
Yeah, so you would need to demonstrate that the Japanese knotweed was actually diminished to a certain point before planting something there. Otherwise, you're just dooming it.
That's our thinking.
Yeah, that makes sense. There isn't at the moment like grading or physical changes being planned other than the removal of this vegetation that an RDA might be in order. But Cassie, I like your thought of maybe it would be kind to, maybe we should just check in with Mark and make sure that the DEP wouldn't find an issue with that, so that we know that if we're willing to consider that they don't go through the work of doing that, to have the DEP turn around and say that that's not the proper thing to do.
Yeah, and I think just like the amount of public exposure and potential interest and things like that, that's the best way to go forward in terms of just making sure there isn't any later administrative issues. So just so, I think this is a really good discussion, but just in the interest of time, are we thinking like there's kind of action items going forward? I'm going to reach out to Mark Stinson. It sounds like you guys have gotten a lot of good notes about what to update on this kind of plan, and maybe there's more in the works of a more final presentation you guys are hoping for. I mean, the commission, that from this group here, kind of based off of this discussion. Oh, Nancy, if you have something.
Yeah, I just, since in the yellow area in particular, it is, as Helena was explaining, is the idea is that it would be a community project, and it should be done at the end of March, early June at the latest, the first cutting, that we were hoping to get at least some preliminary, to get a nod that we can move forward with that idea. If we can't, then we need to wait a year before we start. So that's kind of what we're looking for is, can we go ahead and do that, or do we need to wait a year to get the permits that we need in order to move that forward?
Do you all feel like the 25th, which is our next meeting, would be sort of in time to have the go-ahead, and you could do some tentative planning in the meantime, or do you feel like that would be pushing the start a little too close?
It's a little tight because, well, after that point, we have to start doing the advertising and getting people signed up. So it certainly would push us off to maybe getting it done kind of second week of June or something like that, which is a little on the edge, but not impossible. I mean, that's something we would talk about internally. Would we want to try and do that or not? So yeah, it's unfortunate we didn't come a couple of weeks ago. Apologies.
So Mark Stinson says, we commissions give the go-ahead all the time verbally for that, as long as it's within these criteria. Cassie and Rachel, you guys think we could let them know sort of in the meantime and get it going quicker, and otherwise the RDA route if it wanted to happen this year?
Yeah, as soon as I hear from Mark, I can email everyone and just we can try to do it maybe through email that way.
Or if we don't, I mean, if they didn't need to submit an RDA before starting, I mean, we could give Cassie administrative approval to give her the power to, you know, approve it administratively when she hears, and then contact them directly.
Sorry, Travis, I'm not sure I exactly followed that. Just repeat that proposal.
I guess I'm saying if they need our approval before they get started, but if they don't need to submit an RDA, I mean, it sounds like if they needed to submit an RDA, they wouldn't be able to get started until after our next meeting anyway. But if they don't need to do that, but they do need our approval, and I mean, could we give Cassie the ability to, you know, just make it like an administrative approval?
We can
and
also
then-
call a special meeting and do it that way. And so that would be able to happen within the next 2 weeks. If we got an answer from.
Yep. So yeah, we could do
Lexington,
special meeting.
sorry.
No, it's okay. But we would need the agenda would have to be posted 48 hours. So it would add like a 2-day. I don't know if it's down to the day factor timing wise for them, but the fastest thing is what Travis seems like she's proposing is like, give me administrative approval that if I clarify with DEP that no permitting is necessary, I can say go ahead with this plan kind of as is presented. If we find out that they do need permitting, yeah, they're just gonna have to carry on with that. Otherwise, the special meeting just, it's a little more involved, is all I can say, because we have to post the agenda for 48 hours, business days.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a plan to me as far as the, you know, pending the comment from Mark, giving you admin approval. Seems reasonable to me.
I'm good with that.
That's something we motion for? I don't know, because that's for do.
Yeah, it sounds like just somebody want to make that motion. I guess my only thing would be administrative approval with like conditions, just our boilerplate. So making sure that you're not, you know, you're giving administrative approval for basically the removal of of live vegetation, and that's it. And I would say, yeah, that the bags weren't left on site, and make sure that there's enough conditions that we don't have issues afterwards. But yeah, I guess that sounds like a motion to grant Cassie the administrative approval with after checking with the DEP. Would be on the table.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to grant the people present, citizens of Greenfield, permission to initiate their plan to remove knotweed pending approval by or comment from the DEP. Yes, make that motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion or dissension? Is there anyone abstaining?
I guess the only thing I would say is just the way that he worded that. That makes it sound like we're giving the approval then instead of Cassie. Sorry, it's just a technical.
Yeah, I honestly wasn't sure how it worked. But should we go again? Okay, I'll make a,
I think,
might as well. I'll make a new motion to grant Cassie the ability to give an administrative approval. Is that pending comment from the DEP on the removal of invasive knotweed, pending, given the conditions we discussed? Yes.
Second.
objections? Any abstentions? Okay, there you go. Unanimously passed. Cassie, you can go check in with Mark and let us know what you find. And there's a written plan, like you said. So if you could put that in a shared folder and we can access it. So, yeah, well, that'd be great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being
Appreciate it.
so interested and proactive.
Yeah, thanks for stepping up.
Great swimming areas down there that late in the season are almost gotta really battle those knotweeds to get there. So
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll let you guys know what I find out as soon as I can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one last item that has a person here. Lincoln was kind enough to join us. This should be the last thing. So he just had a really exciting update about the invasive grant that we submitted a letter for support for recently and approval for, or support for. So they got the grant. But I'll let Lincoln tell you more about it.
We can't hear you, Link. At least I can't. I don't have any sound on my end.
There you go. You should be unmuted now.
How about now?
I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, good. Hi. Well, this is from a source that we've gotten grants from in the past for the Griswold GTD property. It's the municipal grant program from DCR, the Forest Stewardship Program. And I heard through the grapevine that they had some extra money this year, so I figured, hey, we could use it. And I put in the application, and they said yes. Actually, in the same week, so they really did have some money to give away before the end of the fiscal year. And so it's a quick turnaround. This all has to be spent and done. Really, they like to have it all done by the middle of June so that they have time to process their paperwork, and the end of their fiscal year is June 30th. So it is for, let's see, 20, I guess the best way to describe it, the whole grant is $2,800, but they will pay 75% of that. So $2,100 they will pay, $700 then, or 25% is up to the grantee. Yeah, grantee to come up with, but you can do that as volunteer labor, in-kind services. So what I envisioned is, and this is a project we've worked on in the past, is invasive plant control around the Griswold GTD property, that the 2,100 would pay for a day of my crew and myself time to go around and kill the invasives on all the upland areas. Mostly it's field edges. There are 3-4 fields on the Griswold GTD property, and that's where the invasives really get a foothold, and they're hard to get rid of because they have all the sunlight. And so we would run around and do that, bring our ATV up there so that we can get people and materials and so forth to all parts of the property. I have a mental map of where all the invasives on the property are. And I this spring early walked around there and checked it out and found out where they were. So two things I would really like to do. One is to get this project, the invasive control there, to be a more community-based ongoing thing and wean it off of herbicides, because what's happened in the past is, well, we'll get a grant, we'll go out, kill them, we'll be in good shape for a year or two, but then they'll sneak back in, and then I'll have to come up with some other harebrained scheme to apply for a grant and get some more money and go out and kill them again. So it would be much nicer if we can get the users of the property and other volunteers to go out and do this work annually, or at least every couple of years, so that we stay on top of it. It's fairly cheap and easy to do invasive control when they're just tiny little plants, you know, first or second year seedlings. They pull up out of the ground easy in the spring. But once they get, you know, bittersweet vines wrapping around shrubs and multiflora that is tough and lacerates you when you try to pull it out, then it's much more expensive and labor intensive. So what I would like to do is, as our in-kind service, or our 25%, I would be happy to give a lesson workshop in invasive plant identification and how to pull them up. I mean, that's it's fairly straightforward, but still, you don't want to, like garlic mustard, you don't want to pull it up and then lay it down, because it'll keep growing. You have to hang it up or dry it out somehow or bag it or something. So I would give this demonstration and lesson to folks, and then turn everybody that shows up, hopefully the big throng of people that show up for the volunteer day, in the area that's along, there's a little brook in between the first two fields as you go into Griswold GTD. It's sort of a muddy little thing you can just step over. It's fairly small. But in the floodplain of that little brook, there are some invasives. It's not terrible, but I think it's a realistic amount of work for a volunteer Saturday morning. And so those people that get trained, we could then deputize or whatever to be the to walk on the trails in successive years and hand pull the invasives out before they get big and before it gets to the point where it is now, where we need to do something. So that is the whole plan. And it's one of those things where the time is tight, and we sort of need to jump right in and get planning on the volunteer day and organize it and plan it and invite people to come out. So I guess that's it. Any questions? Be happy to answer them.
Link, thank you so much for being so on top of Griswold. I really appreciate how you pop up and remind us that that's our responsibility, and just you keep it real. So thank you for keeping your eyes on little grants and things.
It's my pleasure. It's a special place, and I can't go for too long without checking back in up there, because I got to see what's happening.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And we still have our walk outstanding to see about the
yes.
the bird habitat and the chestnuts that you put in there and all kinds of
Yeah.
interesting things. So, yeah, just appreciate you being on top of things. Did you have a question? Somebody was about to jump in with a question and I had at the same time. No. Link, what are the invasive species that you're seeing on the edges there?
Big problems up there, for the most part, are bittersweet and multiflora rose. We also have some garlic mustard and, you know, the usual rogues gallery of different things. There's autumn olive around the field edges, and one of the more widespread ones is Japanese barberry. It's never on Griswold GTD. It's not really thick for the most part, but it's well distributed through a lot of different areas. I think that's, I have not seen glossy buckthorn up there, which is good. So I think that's basically it. The big problems are bittersweet and multiflora rose, especially when you have the multiflora and the bittersweet vines tie them together and makes a impenetrable mat.
Sounds formidable.
Yeah.
And it sounds like similarly for this one, all they need is some kind of approval from you guys. I guess it sounds like, I don't know if there's, I mean, obviously you probably still have more questions. I'm just thinking now, like, what the next steps are. And Lincoln, are you saying that you're like willing to take on organizing the volunteer and all that stuff?
Well, yes, but I'd like your help on it if I could, because you had said that you had some people that were interested in invasive plant removal, and we ought to tap into that if we can. Yeah. And I still have the names of everybody that's come on our public walks up there, and you know, users of the property and other interested folks. So I think between those two lists, and if we could have your official Town of Greenfield stationery to send it out on or something like that, I think that would help.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd love to help however I can, and I think I could definitely do that. And the people that I was thinking about were the people who were just here, who are already really fired up about invasives. So, and they probably know other people too.
Too busy.
Yeah, well, now I'm thinking they might be busy, but they might know other people too. It sounds like this one might be getting started potentially first. So, well, I mean, we'll see. But them, and then I have some other people.
My project sounds a lot easier than theirs, so maybe it's a good slow initiation into the world of invasive plant fighting.
Mm-hmm. I assume you and your group are going to remove the invasives that you take out, right? I mean, you're gonna remove.
Yeah. Though let's the word remove to me just means kill. We don't take the vegetation and do anything with it. We just let it die and rot in place.
Okay.
Because it would be much more expensive to try to bag it up or, you know, chip it or, you know, or haul it out of there.
Okay. And the people you train, is that going to be the same thing, that they are just going to leave it? They're going to pull it and leave it? Or?
Yes, but if it's something that can reroot, I think what we tend to do is, like with a garlic mustard, hang it from a low-hanging branch of some shrubbery or something right there, so that the roots, at least for a day or two, will dry out, you know, be in the sun, and then it isn't going to be able to reroot after the plant is dry.
Okay. Yeah.
And in contrast to having, bags and bags of knotweed, the volume of stuff that we're going to be taking out of the ground, they're pretty much small plants, all 6 inches to a foot tall.
Okay.
Lincoln, did you say there was bittersweet as well?
Yes.
So removing that, I assume the plan, like doing it earlier, before the fruits are really present and viable. But does bittersweet have fruits that kind of hang around for multiple seasons? And if so, would it be possible to like bag, any mature
Yeah,
sort of?
there won't be any.
There won't be. Okay.
In June, there won't be any fruits on it.
I was just trying to picture if
really, that's not, their fruits aren't going to be there and viable until probably September at the earliest. Right now, it hasn't even flowered yet, so I think we're going to get it before the fruit's set.
Yeah, I was just trying to picture if it was one of those things that kind of hangs on for a while, like
It does in the winter, but they don't form and get viable until, well, maybe August at the earliest, but we'll be long done with our project by then.
Got it.
And the same with the multiflora rose. So we'd be getting all these before the fruits are viable.
Got it.
Something I just thought of, I didn't think of this before when we were listening to the other folks talk about invasive species removal, but and I apologize, I'm not familiar with the Griswold property. Are there any rare species concerns up there? Are there any priority habitats or rare plants that we need to be protecting or worried
There's
about?
no priority. Natural Heritage has not designated the Griswold property as a priority habitat.
I'll click into that for the other project. I think it's a good note.
I think it is, but I think it's barren strawberry, black maple, and maybe wood turtles, but probably not an issue, but maybe something to think about for another time.
Well, I will motion to happily accept the grant that Lincoln has done all of the work to get. And support him however he needs it in order to make the workshop and the work happen. I think
Second that one.
Thanks, Fletcher. Is there any further discussion? Is there any objections? Any dissensions? Sorry, abstentions. Okay. Thank you, Link. That was unanimous. And yeah, really appreciate you just keeping tabs on our little Griswold.
Well, thanks very much. And in my gratitude, I will invite you all to the workday.
Please do. I hope we have some representation, and we'll definitely help spread the word. Once there's a flyer, or I don't know, however you decide to do it, Cassie, if it's bonus, if it's shareable on Facebook and the social medias, easy to disseminate.
I feel like there's a lot of equestrian use there. If we could like target them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll keep you guys posted as the stuff gets made. I'll be working with Lincoln to figure it out, how we're going to spread the info. So I'll keep you all posted.
I just had an idea. I wonder if we could get Greenfield Recreation. They have their own Facebook page. Maybe they could share it on there since it's a recreation location in Greenfield.
Absolutely. I'll reach out to them.
It's a great idea.
That's a great idea. The recreation department was instrumental in getting the trail system built out there way back when in the early 80s. They were gung-ho cross-country skiing, and so we worked together to make the trail system that exists today. So probably nobody's around that remembers that, but we could point it out.
No, but that's one of the times I go to Griswold most is when there's snow, because it's one of my favorite places to ski. So I didn't know that they were responsible for that, but appreciate it. All right. Thank you, Lincoln, for sticking around. I'm waiting to the end of our long meeting.
You've had a long day. All right. Good night.
Good night. Yeah. Cassie, is there anything else that we need to get done tonight?
There's nothing else actionable. I guess most of you know by now. The only thing I wanted to add was that I'm going to be stepping down as the conservation agent. And the only reason is because East Hampton offered me a full-time position. And I had to accept it.
Congratulations.
For no negative reasons at all for why I'm leaving. And what I'm going to do, and I think I've worked out all the details with Eric now, is I'm going to keep working on Fridays, definitely at least through, so I'm not going to start being full-time in East Hampton until the 24th of this month. I'm going to keep working on Fridays and coming to meetings through at least June. So I'll still help with that transition, and then I'll keep you all updated on what the process is for him finding someone new. Hopefully you guys can be more involved. It sounds like potentially you've been in the past. I don't know how all that would work, but I'll advocate for you all. But yeah, that was the last thing. And I hate to make this meeting last any longer. But it's been great working with you all. I'll miss you all. It's been a great mission. So I really appreciate how much you've all taught me.
Cassie.
See that she needed to go find us another equally capable and competent person to come and to take your place, because it's been really great to work with you. So yeah.
Thank you. That's so nice of you to say.
And it would be great if the planning department were able to make this a full-time position by combining it with another position, which it has been in the past.
Yeah, it used to be. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll reach out to Eric and just see if I can poke a little bit, point out. We wouldn't be losing. We wouldn't be losing an excellent person right now if this position was full-time. So it's noted. And thank you so much for sticking around and going above and beyond to continue working above your full-time job. Help us fill the gap. That's been what you need to do, and it's so appreciated. So
yeah, I want to help however I can. I don't want to leave you guys in a lurch. So I think it'll work out quite well.
Cool. All right. Well, I have a motion to adjourn then too, just to keep things speedy here at the end, if there's a second.
Second.
Great. Oh, and of course, I just thought of one more thing. If I drop off where in town can I leave a card for John for folks to sign? Or am I allowed to like, yeah, how can we organize something to say things to John?
Yeah, the my 20 Sanderson Street office that I believe you're all familiar with is open to the public. You have to like they have to take your temperature when you first walk in. But otherwise it's open. So I'm not in there very often, but Eric is in there pretty much every day except for Fridays. Sometimes he often takes Fridays off. So you can leave it on my desk and it's literally just right when you walk into my office or Eric and I's office is my desk. So and I can go in there and sign it and even get it mailed off when you guys are done. So yeah, if you could just go in whatever and drop it off if that works for you.
Does that work for everybody? Is everyone cool with that? If I leave a card at the planning department office, find a time in the next week or 2 weeks to stop in and write a note?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do that and I'll let you guys know when it's there.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Sweet.
Okay, you done? Nobody objected?
Thanks, y'all.
Objected?
What?
I said nobody objected to our
Oh,
motion.
yes, yeah, nobody objected. That was, I guess I'm assuming it's no objections, no abstentions here again. Thanks, Erica.
Bye, everybody.
Official. All right.
Good night.
Bye.